Well, you guys, we're planting a garden today, and it's been really important to me to pick plants that would have been grown long ago out here on the prairie when homesteaders first came west. Now that said, this is an overly ambitious, somewhat ridiculous goal because this is one of the harshest places to try to grow a garden. Not only are we in the north of Montana where it's cold in the winter, hot in the summer, viciously windy, but on top of that, we are smack dab in the middle of a wild valley. That means every bit of bird life, ground life, wildlife, it's all here.
Hi.
Hi. And when I'm not in the garden, you better believe it's coming for the garden too. But we're well on our way. We'll see if this is a fool's errand or a real experience of history. Before we can get to the rock borders, the willow wigwams, and the many old-fashioned plants, there's one task that we must get right, or nothing else will matter. First things first, a garden demands good soil. Not so long ago on this very ranch, this would have been done with horses and a plow. But today we have the benefit of a small tractor. And Robbie's a pro at this part. This old homestead has been sitting here for 130 years, slowly rotting into the soil. Now surrounding it, the ground has been broken up by the plow for hay and crops for a good chunk of its life. It's not too far from a small creek in the bottom of a valley, so the soil is pretty darn rich, with a good bit of clay and some silt. But that's not enough, so our first steps are to punch up what it can grow by adding a good old rotted manure from the ranch steers. This really is the good stuff, the magic that retained moisture and helped your vegetables grow. There wasn't any Miracle-Gro back in the day, just good old-fashioned muck, and it was gold. I've tried putting in gardens into sandy, rocky soil, and it's the same amount of work, but the result is almost nothing. Luckily, the soil we're starting with is not that bad. All right, it's a beautiful, beautiful spring day out here, and we're getting ready to put this garden in. But out here in Montana, the best thing to do is to start your seeds before it's time to plant them out because our growing season is so short here. We've got little baby plants potted up, borage, fennel, onions, anything we could get a jump start on, we did. And that's gonna make this garden a lot more exciting to plant. The first food crop to go in? Potatoes. These can be hit or miss here. Potatoes are tough as old boots, but we aren't the only creatures who like to eat them. So it's gonna be a fight to see who gets to them first. I'm planting a few old varieties, notably this blue one, called All Blue, which I'm curious if it'll have a good flavor or perhaps be a bit bitter. Then we have the classic French fingerlings. This is nice, soft soil, all tilled up, so the potatoes should be pretty happy. So we got our ground prepped a couple weeks ago. We added manure to it, it's all freshly dug up, and now we have a little bit of everything to plant. A pioneer out here, they would have had to plant enough to get by, to actually survive. And a lot of these plants are the same ones they would have used. After the blue potatoes and the French fingerlings went in, it was time for the asparagus. Now, potatoes are for this year, but asparagus is meant to feed us in years to come. It'll be a while before it's ready to harvest, maybe 2 or 3 years. If you've ever stumbled onto an old abandoned cabin out in a field or out in the woods, you'll often see just a few plants surviving around it. Asparagus is one, so are rhubarb and maybe an old yellow rose, and we are planting all 3 of those in the garden today. They don't require a lot of care and attention, and they'll go on living for years and years, often long past the time when all the people have left. Whew, the garden's going in, it's starting to heat up. The wind keeps kicking up, so I don't know how some of these plants are gonna appreciate that, but we're gonna do our best. Whew. Let's get a quick sketch going to show you the plan, because we have a lot to pack into a very small garden. A garden the size of the one we're making is really just a sample garden. This could never have fed a family over an entire winter here. Homesteader accounts talk about just how much land it really took when cultivating a garden, and it was acres. Listen to this list of what the harvest yielded for just one family. 1 large bin of potatoes, more than 2 tons, half a ton of carrots, a large bin of beets, 1 of turnips, 1 of onions, 1 of parsnips, and on the other side of the cellar, we have more than 100 heads of cabbage. This is a woman who milked 10 cows twice a day, and that was what it took to pay for a year's supply of flour. Now you needed to grow enough food for yourselves, enough to account for spoilage, and hopefully some sort of cash crop. On this ranch, that would be wheat. Montana grows great wheat. And we have many, many acres of 1800s wheat planted right now. So we're just praying for the right rains and no grasshoppers. I've also brought seeds. We'll put them out here and see. These are pretty hardy. This culinary sage is a tough one. Of all the hardy plants out there, this might be the one. It's amazing how few seeds you get in seed packets these days, but they're just little tiny black round, almost perfectly round seeds. And this is one of my favorite herbs to grow in Montana because not only can you use it in cooking, but it's very, very hardy and it's beautiful. Anywhere I've put some moisture down, I'm trying to get a seed in. Probably the best thing about herbs, though, is that most other creatures don't like to eat them. So they are a lot easier to keep alive, because human beings are kind of the only ones who like the flavor of them. This way we're starting off one step ahead of all the pests out here. And there are a lot of pests. If there's one category of plant that can stand up to this barrage, it's herbs. Let's get those in the soil, because these are going to give us tea when we're sick and flavor to our wild game meat. We've got a long list of herbs, and many of them are perennials, so they'll come back year after year for us. And I'm just sticking them in mostly toward the gate and toward the pathway so I can easily access them, but I'm sprinkling them all throughout this garden. So that's some herbs started, but those aren't going to keep us alive. In addition to a whole slew of herbs going in, plants like pumpkins and rutabagas are what kept many a family going in the lean months of winter. We're testing out a few varieties of orange pumpkins here, sugar pumpkins and carving pumpkins. Next to the red currant, we've got tarragon to go in. Now, Russian tarragon is very hardy, but not as sweet as French tarragon, so we're going with the fancier variety here. That may be a mistake when the cold comes, because this should be a perennial and come back year after year, but one harsh winter may decide that. Other herbs to go in will include mint, lavender, parsley, marjoram, and lovage, which is a great northern substitute for celery. We struggle to grow celery here in our short season. And pioneers coming west would have faced the same difficult test of learning which varieties and which plants grew well at home back east, but failed miserably out here in the west. They certainly started with the base of more skills than us, be that with gardening, food preservation, laundry, cooking, etc. They knew what they were doing. But this was a whole new world to them, and often they were promised a lush green paradise only to find thin topsoil and a windswept sagebrush prairie, where growing anything was a tremendous challenge. This account hits that home. The pamphlets, addressed as much to the store clerk, the school teacher, the barber, the discharged soldier, as to the farmer, were printed in bulk and distributed throughout the overcrowded cities of the United States. They found their way to Europe, to Bessarabia, Germany, Sweden, Norway, Ireland, England. They promised a new life in a green land to anyone who could muster the fare to Montana. Families spent their life savings on the transatlantic passage, in steerage, to New York, and then by rail on the long journey to the far west. And when they disembarked from the train at Ismay, Mildred, or Terry, most were confounded by what they saw. The gently rolling farmland of the pamphlets turned out to be mile after mile of open range, bone dry, dotted with the mushroom-shaped rock formations of the Badlands, without a sheltering tree in sight. By the early 1900s, homesteaders began to flee the land to which they had come with bold and optimistic dreams. They were exhausted and bankrupted by a combination of brutal cold, drought, falling wheat prices, and a burden of debt, taken on when the bank loans were cheap and easy. Credit was as much to blame in the end as the Montana weather. This spot out here looks idyllic, but it betrays a darker truth. Back in history, there were multiple homesteads out here that failed. Across the creek were 2 different women homesteaders. Across the road, the European homesteaders were forced to become coal miners and send their daughters to town to work. But they managed to hang on for generations. This is a beautiful but unforgiving place, and a garden proves that in a nutshell. And I believe we've just had our first taste of that. Got about half that garden planted the other day. It was a beautiful Memorial Day, and we came out here to water the plants, which of course are all barely holding on, and we found that there have been some intruders. But when we showed up here today, I noticed the rhubarb was looking a little wilty. And that's not like rhubarb, it's a pretty tough plant. And the weather's been a bit windy, but pretty warm and nice. And I walked over to it, and I pulled some of the rocks away from the base. The roots are gone, just gone. In the day and a half that rhubarb has been planted here, some little creature, probably one of the many gophers, has found that rhubarb and killed it. Killed it. I see him right now. Little devil. I mean, I know gardening out here is going to be hard, but I'm beginning to think it might just be impossible. I want to hold out as much hope as I possibly can. I want this to work. Gardening does not come free and easy, and it certainly doesn't come easy in a place like Montana. I think we're in for rough seas ahead. Okay, I immediately tore off some of these rhubarb leaves just so the plant doesn't lose as much water to evaporation, and we'll see if we can keep whatever's left of that root system alive, but it's an uphill battle. Both historically and for us today, we want 3 categories of plants to go in. So there's the staple food crops, there's herbs, and flowers. And that includes shrubs like this red currant that should produce year after year, giving us an excellent vitamin C source. It's interesting, a good deal of wild game recipes I found in old cookbooks include some sort of currant sauce, so we know that was a preferred taste of people on the frontier. Wild gooseberries and red currants can be found along the creek banks, so foraging was as much a part of everyone's diet as trying to grow the food yourself. The barn cats and the kids love the foraging part, but there's not much in berry just yet. This time of year, that's dandelions and stinging nettle. So looking forward to a planted garden was something absolutely done with hungry stomachs. But the wildflowers are shifting from spring to summer, which means we're well on our way to warmer days and food growing. But anyone who gardens knows if you're not in a place every day, every hour, with cats and dogs and things happening, you're gonna be in for some loss. So just buck up and prepare. So we've faced some death already. The borage and fennel seedlings that we spent weeks getting started, they're bitten off at the base. Gone. I have a few extras to try again with, so hope is not all lost. The lavender has been crushed by rolling rocks as we started to build the perimeter borders of this garden. Now it's inhospitable. But these rocks will act as a delineation for us to keep the grass out of the garden and hold some warmth from the sun to slowly release it to the plants at night. It's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Onwards we go. From squash to lavender, lovage to root vegetables, this garden needs to have a little bit of it all. For food, for medicine, for, dare we say it, beauty. The soul needs nourishment as much as the body, right? There's sandhill cranes. There's 2 parents and three young sandhills, and they're all nested over by the pond. We've seen them flying over. I think one of them just made a pass over the top of the cabin just to kind of suss out what we were up to. But they've got the whole family over there in the pond. I think they're bedding down for the evening. It's a beautiful sight to see. Now let's get down to details. Robbie has spent hours adding a metal fence all around the cabin. Yeah, it's no good at stopping deer or gophers, but it's absolutely necessary for keeping the cattle from trampling the garden in the next few weeks as they get turned out to pasture. Without this fence, the garden would be gone in a day. Now, Rome wasn't built in a day, and a homesteader garden never went in a day. So I hope you'll join us next episode when we jump into the garden to take all that cut willow and turn it into wigwams for peas and beans. And I have an eerie feeling that I've made a terrible mistake with the rocks, but time will tell. There's more flowers and more food and more medicinal plants to go into this garden, so I hope you'll join us. And if you want to taste a flavor nearly lost to the 1800s, we have Heritage Rouge de Bordeaux wheat berries available in our small online store. This is the same wheat we've planted, and hopefully if the crop comes in, we'll have flour come fall. But like many of the plants going into this garden, the varieties and the plants themselves are from a moment in time. Some still relevant today, some already forgotten. Please say a prayer the gophers don't take it all by next week. Cheers.
I'm not gonna eat you.
Have you been eating our garden? Yeah. How can you not do that?
I don't want you to do it because they're gonna be beautiful plants, and when they're beautiful, you can eat them.
Yeah, well, I don't really want him to eat them.
Yeah, we don't even want you to eat them.